Hello everybody, this is Catholic Dad, episode number 148. I want to talk about safe spaces today and what they mean. Um, Safe space is it's a current trend within academic institutions these days. It's something that's probably several years old. In the history of the world, it's probably never existed, and there's probably never been an equivalent to it. So it's kind of a unique point in history. A safe space is a place that students go, and when I say students, I mean grown adults. They're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, where they go when they're feeling like society is being slightly mean to them in some way. We call those microaggressions, that you phrased a point of view of yours that was not sensitive enough to either their gender or their racial minority status or their transgender status or their sexuality, or you name it, any one of the disparaged groups in society that always claim that the world's against them, that you can accidentally say something that knocks people over. That's called a microaggression, and that these people, because they're subject to so many microaggressions in the world, that they retreat to something called their own little safe spaces where, and I kid you not, these people actually have kittens and puppy dogs that they can pet to soothe themselves, and they also have crayons and coloring books, and I'm also going to kid you not, there's actually university administrators that actually acknowledge this, and they affirm this kind of behavior, which would make you wonder why they're an administrator. It's like they shouldn't be in any kind of executive position of power or authority if they're going to allow such behavior to occur on their campuses, or actually affirm such behavior. I mean, they could sit there and say, yeah, you shouldn't be doing this. And the argument goes like this. When you're confronted with tragedies in the world, or any kind of aggression, whether it's perceived or real, right? Those are the two possibilities. Either it's a real attack or it's not a real attack, and you just think it's an attack. I mean, that's probably 95% of attacks on college campuses are perceived. But nonetheless, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be the kind of person that's falls over, gets knocked to the ground and stompled on, and you're not able to get up, and you're like the whole world can dominate you by just saying some words you disagree with? Or do you want to be the kind of person that's fortified against any possible attack? You're formidable and you're able to deal with anybody's position and any kind of verbal assault or any line of reasoning, and move on in the world and actually pose a counter argument and become stronger because of it. Now, when I grew up, you try to prepare your children to be strong. You try to prepare your children to take the world on, face on, walk to it and say, listen up, watch out world, here I come, and I don't care what the heck you bring me, I'm going to be bigger and stronger than you. That's what you want your children to be. That's what I want my children to be. You don't want your children, when somebody refers to them as the wrong pronoun accidentally, so that they kind of fall over and they can't believe that people would do that to them. And whatever microaggression, I don't even espouse to the idea of microaggressions, but people do, and you don't want your children falling down in the face of any kind of minor adversity, because if you do that, that's called weakness. And really, there was a time in the world, and it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, that if you stated, I am weak and this is why, should ring a point of shame in your life. You shouldn't be able to say that and say it with any kind of pride or any kind of acknowledgement of accomplishment. It would be something you'd probably try to hide. And frankly, parents used to be, you'd teach them things like sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. The parents have completely and utterly failed in the formation of said children. And I wonder if they're ashamed these days, because they developed adults, by the way, these are adults, 18 plus years old, that are not able to deal with words, right? Just simple words. And frankly, what are words for? Words are for communication. And by the way, what's communication for? Well, I think communication's for the seeking of truth. And so if words knock you over, the ones that you don't want to hear, perhaps the truth will also knock you over, and you're not able to deal with the truth. And frankly, that is probably the gravest problem with these safe spaces, that perhaps somebody comes along, some truth teller, that has something to tell them, and they fall down and say, you're so horrible, I can't believe how aggressive you are, all these microaggressions, oh, I'm going to go pet a kitten and color in a coloring book. That's a problem, people. And so if you espouse to the safe space ideology, or if you believe the safe space ideology is actually a reasonable position, just realize you think weakness is reasonable, because it is weakness, by the way, when you're retreating from the world and petting kittens when you're a grown adult. That's childish behavior. It shows that you weren't formed well, and it shows that you kind of need to grow up a little bit. And if you espouse that, or you at least think it's reasonable, it's time to start doing some deeper meditation, because what you want in your world, with regards to yourself and with regards to the children that you create and the formation of your children, you want people that espouse strength, right? You want them to be fortified against the ills of the world, so that every travesty doesn't knock them over. And here's the deal. If you want to become fortified in the ways of the world, I would argue that you should seek the truth. And therefore, that would automatically, if you seek the truth and you read a lot of history, it should bring you around to the Roman Catholic faith. Because the truth seekers in the Roman Catholic faith eventually become the saints of the faith. And most of them, or a lot of them, became saints of the faith through martyrdom. Do you think the saints were retreating in the safe spaces when they were giving their blood for the church, or were they marching there with shoulders back and doing with like fortification against the ills of the world, and doing it with dignity and honor? What kind of person do you want to become? I would say, you know, forging forward with dignity and honor is much better than retreating with weakness and cowardice. And so safe space ideology is quite harmful for the formation of people. It is also, it's also probably a little bit of a political manipulation against the other side, because every gender stereotype, gender group, racial minority, or whatever group you want to break yourself into is eventually going to use safe spaces to get their way on academic campuses. And then eventually, the really smart people that don't need safe spaces, the really strong people that don't need them, are going to retreat from the university system, which I think is already underway. And so this is Catholic Dad making you think about it. If you want to be strong and fortified against the world, live a sacramental life and pray the daily rosary. If you do those two things, you'll never need a safe space for the rest of your life. God bless you, and get to church.